You know, there's something powerful, almost sacred, about loyalty. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's one of the most valuable qualities a person can carry in their heart. A loyal man, he gives his time, his energy, his trust, freely and fully. He stands by you, even when the storms roll in. Loyalty is a gift, not a guarantee. That simple truth is often misunderstood, overlooked, or taken for granted. You see, when someone is loyal, it means they have made a conscious choice, not out of obligation, not out of fear, but out of principle. It's a decision rooted in integrity, in belief, in faith. Loyalty comes from within. It cannot be demanded, bought, or manipulated. It's not transactional. And when someone chooses to give it to you, they are giving something rare, something sacred. People often confuse loyalty with weakness. They see it as passivity, as submission, as someone not having the strength to walk away. But that's a mistake. Loyalty isn't about staying because you have no other options. It's about staying when you have every reason to leave and still choose to stand firm. A loyal man stays not because he has to, but because he believes in something greater than the moment. He believes in people, in promises, in principles. But that's where many people get it wrong. They think because someone is loyal, they'll always be there. That no matter how many times they're dismissed, disrespected, or devalued, they'll still show up. They assume that loyalty is endless, that it comes with no terms, no expiration, no limit. And that's the illusion that creates the fall. Because loyalty is not a guarantee. It is not owed. It is earned. And when it's misused, it disappears. Quietly, but completely. A loyal man gives from his heart. He's consistent. He listens when others would walk away. He defends when others would remain silent. He's there in the shadows, holding the line, protecting the bond. That kind of presence, that kind of soul, is not something you find every day. And when you hurt that kind of man, when you break that unspoken contract, you don't just lose his loyalty. You lose a piece of yourself that was held together by it. This is why loyalty, when received, must be respected. It must be recognized for what it is, a treasure, a quiet form of love. It's not loud like praise, it's not flashy like gifts, but it's deeper, more grounding. It's the person who shows up after everyone else has left, the one who holds on when everything's falling apart, the one who believes in you even when you've stopped believing in yourself. And when someone like that chooses to walk away, know that it wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a result of too many moments where their loyalty was treated like an expectation instead of an honor. People often wake up too late. They see what they had after it's gone, and they realize they weren't just losing a person, they were losing the very foundation of trust, of safety, of presence. Loyalty isn't loud, but its absence echoes. And once it's gone, it doesn't return easily. Because the loyal man doesn't hold grudges, but he never forgets where he was forced to let go of what he gave freely. The mistake many make is believing that loyalty means unconditional tolerance, that no matter what they do, the loyal person will endure it. But loyalty isn't about enduring abuse. It's about standing by someone who values your presence, who protects the bond just as fiercely as you do. When that balance is broken, loyalty becomes silence, distance, disconnection. And in that space, the man who once gave without question begins to ask questions about you, about himself, about what he truly deserves. Betrayal doesn't break a loyal man. It builds his boundaries. There's a misconception that when you betray someone who has stood by you, who has defended you, who has remained when everyone else walked away, you're breaking them. People think that betrayal shatters something so deeply that the loyal man never recovers. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't break him. It awakens him. It forces him to see what he had ignored, to acknowledge what he had overlooked, and to draw lines he never thought he needed. A loyal man doesn't walk into relationships with walls. He walks in open. He walks in with trust. He assumes good intent. He leads with his heart, not because he's naive, but because he believes that truth and loyalty can build something real. He gives people the benefit of the doubt. He forgives quickly. He listens intently. And that level of vulnerability is strength, not weakness. It's the strength to love without armor, to support without keeping score, to be present without condition. But when betrayal enters the picture, when lies surface, when actions don't match words, when loyalty is taken for granted, that strength doesn't disappear. It simply redirects. The loyal man doesn't become bitter overnight. He becomes aware. And that awareness shifts everything. It doesn't make him hateful. It makes him wise. It doesn't make him closed. It makes him careful. What once was an open gate becomes a guarded door. What once was immediate trust becomes earned access. People often don't realize what they've done until they see the shift. They think the silence is moodiness. They think the withdrawal is ego. But it's not. It's protection. It's the loyal man learning that not everyone deserves the depth he offers so freely. He begins to assess, not react. He begins to evaluate, not assume. The boundaries he builds are not walls to keep people out. They're filters to keep his peace in. Betrayal teaches him to value his energy, to stop pouring into cups that leak, to stop planting seeds in barren ground. It makes him look inward and ask the hard questions. Why did I tolerate that? Why did I excuse that behavior? Why did I keep showing up for someone who kept proving they wouldn't do the same? And in those questions, he finds clarity. Clarity that doesn't come from pain alone, but from the growth that pain demands. What betrayal really does is force the loyal man to redefine loyalty, not as blind commitment, but as mutual respect. Loyalty is not about staying no matter what. It's about showing up for those who would do the same. It's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. And once a loyal man understands that, his boundaries become non-negotiable, not out of resentment, but out of experience. He no longer entertains empty promises. He no longer gives energy to inconsistency. He doesn't chase closeness with people who don't know how to keep it. Instead, he learns to preserve his peace. He learns that his loyalty is not a currency to be spent on those who don't value it. It's a sacred offering, one that must be matched with intention, respect, and consistency. Betrayal doesn't make him cold. It makes him clear. It doesn't close his heart. It sharpens his discernment. And from that place, the loyal man begins to move differently. He listens more than he speaks. He observes more than he reacts. He tests character before investing deeply. And in doing so, he begins to attract people who value his loyalty, not exploit it. Pain becomes power when purpose is found. At first, pain feels like destruction. It feels like something has been taken, something has been lost, and the emptiness it leaves behind feels unbearable. Especially for a loyal man, one who loved deeply, gave generously, believed fully. When that loyalty is betrayed or wounded, the pain cuts deeper than most can imagine. It's not just emotional discomfort. It's a fracture of identity, of trust, of meaning. And in that place, it's easy to believe that pain is only there to harm, to weaken, to diminish. But pain has another side, one that isn't seen in the moment, but reveals itself when the loyal man begins to search for meaning inside the chaos. When he stops asking, why did this happen to me? And starts asking, what is this trying to show me? That shift from victimhood to vision is where power begins to take root. Because pain without purpose is suffering, but pain with purpose is transformation. When a loyal man experiences betrayal, he's forced into a confrontation with himself. He starts to examine the role he played, not to blame himself, but to understand, to grow, to realign. He begins to recognize the patterns of overgiving, of ignoring red flags, of mistaking potential for reality. And as he digs through the pain, he begins to uncover truths he never paid attention to before. These truths are heavy, but they're also freeing. They hold the keys to his next evolution. Power doesn't come from pretending the pain isn't real. It comes from facing it, from sitting with it, from allowing it to teach. The loyal man realizes that his pain is showing him where his boundaries were too loose, where his standards were too low, where his trust was placed too quickly. And instead of letting that realization break him, he lets it shape him. He lets it refine his awareness. He lets it sharpen his instincts. Through that process, the pain begins to shift. It's no longer a weight he drags. It becomes a fuel he uses, a source of wisdom, a reminder of what he will no longer tolerate, a blueprint for how he will move forward. That's how pain becomes power, by forcing change, by demanding growth, by burning away everything that was weak or misaligned. What's left is stronger, smarter, clearer. The loyal man, once hurt, begins to build with intention. He no longer chases people, he attracts alignment. He no longer proves his worth, he embodies it. The pain taught him that his value doesn't depend on being needed, but on being whole. He finds purpose not in fixing others, but in building himself. And that shift changes everything. He begins to walk differently, speak differently, choose differently. Purpose gives the pain context. It tells the loyal man that the heartbreak wasn't pointless, that the betrayal wasn't in vain. It was a turning point, a wake-up call, a necessary chapter in a story that's still being written. The energy that once went into mourning the loss begins to go into creating the future. The questions that once haunted him, why me, how could they, begin to fade. And in their place come declarations. I will rise. I will protect my peace. I will move forward with clarity. What he once saw as a breaking point now becomes a defining moment. He doesn't forget the pain, but he no longer fears it. He carries it as evidence of survival, of growth, of rebirth. The loyal man understands now that his pain carved space for something greater, something more aligned, more powerful, more true. A hurt, loyal man doesn't seek revenge. He seeks reinvention. When someone deeply loyal is wounded, there's a misconception that he will retaliate, that he will look to inflict the same kind of pain he received. But revenge isn't in his nature. Loyalty isn't rooted in ego, it's rooted in principle. And when that principle is violated, he doesn't fall into petty battles or emotional warfare. Instead, he turns inward. He doesn't plot to destroy others. He begins the work of rebuilding himself. Reinvention is not a reaction, it's a rebirth. When a loyal man is hurt, he begins to strip away everything that allowed the pain to take root. He starts to examine his values, his decisions, his boundaries. He asks himself where he gave too much, where he ignored his own intuition, where he settled for less than he deserved. This is not about shame. It's about clarity. It's about understanding how to protect what is sacred inside him. He doesn't spend time proving people wrong. He spends time becoming someone who no longer needs to. His silence speaks louder than any confrontation. His growth becomes his statement. The man who once gave endlessly now begins to invest selectively. The man who once tolerated emotional chaos now cultivates peace. And this shift doesn't happen overnight. It comes through solitude, through reflection, through a conscious decision to evolve rather than react. People often expect the hurt, loyal man to lash out. They expect anger, bitterness, retaliation. But what they see instead is distance, disconnection, stillness. That stillness is where the reinvention begins. Because when loyalty has been taken for granted, the man who gave it starts to look inward and ask himself what parts of him were ignored, not by others, but by himself. He begins to rediscover the version of him that was sacrificed for the sake of keeping others close. He starts to move with more intention. The words he speaks carry more weight. The choices he makes are no longer driven by emotion, but by alignment. He becomes more selective with his time, his energy, his heart. Where he once said yes to avoid conflict, he now says no to protect his peace. Where he once stayed to fix things, he now walks away to preserve himself. This transformation is quiet, but undeniable. People may not recognize it at first, but they feel it. The energy changes. The aura shifts. The loyal man no longer bends to be understood. He becomes grounded in who he is. He no longer explains his worth. He lives it. Reinvention is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who he was before the world taught him to shrink, to tolerate, to overextend. His focus changes. It's no longer on what he lost, but on what he's gaining. He invests in his health, his growth, his dreams. He reads more, reflects more. He cuts off distractions and aligns with purpose. The pain that once weighed him down becomes the fire that fuels him, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to honor himself. The version of him that rises is not hardened, it's refined, not colder, but wiser, not closed off, but discerning. Reinvention is the loyal man's way of reclaiming power. He understands now that loyalty to others means nothing without loyalty to self. He no longer pours from an empty cup. He no longer sacrifices his peace for someone else's comfort. The man who was once hurt has now become someone who sees everything more clearly. His heart is still open, but it's guarded by purpose. His mind is still kind, but it's sharper. His soul is still generous, but now it comes with conditions, grounded in self-respect. Growth begins where trust was broken. There's a turning point in every loyal man's life when something shatters. Not his will, not his capacity to love, but his trust. And in that fracture, something awakens. The world no longer looks the same. The people he once held close now seem distant. The conversations, the promises, the memories, all take on a different weight. And in that space of brokenness, he's left with a choice. Stay in the pain or step into. Trust is not just a feeling, it's a foundation. When a loyal man trusts, he gives more than belief, he gives access. He lets someone into his thoughts, his vulnerabilities, his hopes. He lowers his guard because he believes that connection is safe. But when that trust is broken, something essential within him shifts. It's not just the betrayal of the moment, it's the disorientation that follows. He begins to question not only the other person, but himself. How did I not see this? Why did I let that slide? What was I holding on to that wasn't real? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. And in asking them, the loyal man begins to grow. He begins to unravel the parts of himself that were too trusting, too forgiving, too invested in potential. He learns that trust isn't a gift to be given freely to all. It's something sacred that must be earned and protected. He starts to set standards not just for others, but for himself. He redefines what loyalty means, not blind devotion, but mutual integrity. The pain becomes a mirror. It shows him where he abandoned himself to stay connected. It reveals where he compromised his peace for the sake of keeping the peace. And in those reflections, he finds truth. The kind of truth that doesn't come through comfort, but through confrontation. He starts to recognize his patterns, the way he gave without receiving, the way he hoped without grounding, the way he trusted without discernment. This realization doesn't harden him, it hones him. He becomes more intentional with his trust, more present with his choices. He stops assuming that others operate with the same loyalty he carries in his heart. And instead of letting that realization make him bitter, he lets it make him wiser. He begins to hold people accountable to their words. He no longer listens only to what is said, he watches what is done. Growth is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle, steady, and deeply internal. The loyal man may not speak of his transformation, but it shows in the way he carries himself, in the way he pauses before offering himself too quickly, in the way he values his own peace more than temporary connection. He understands now that not everyone deserves access. Not everyone has the capacity to meet him where he stands. And that's not a reason to close off. It's a reason to refine his circle. The loyal man who has experienced broken trust starts to build differently. He stops pouring into relationships that are not mutual. He stops justifying actions that clearly cross boundaries. He holds space for himself in ways he once only held space for others. The energy that was once scattered trying to keep things together is now focused inward, creating a foundation that no one can shake. From broken trust comes clarity, and from clarity comes direction. The loyal man begins to chase alignment instead of attachment. He stops trying to fix what was meant to end and starts building what was meant to last. The journey of growth may have started with pain, but it continues with purpose. Every step forward is a reclaiming of self-respect, a rewriting of identity, and a deep, quiet commitment to never again lose himself for the sake of keeping someone else. The next version of him is unstoppable. After pain, after betrayal, after loss, something new begins to emerge. It doesn't look like the man he was before. It doesn't carry the same naivety, the same openness, or the same expectations, but it carries more strength, more clarity, more control. The man who once lived through heartbreak no longer seeks validation outside of himself. He has met the edge of who he was, and instead of falling, he chose to rise. The process wasn't easy. It started with silence, with loneliness, with long nights where he questioned everything, his choices, his values, his worth. He replayed memories. He examined every word, every moment, every red flag he ignored. And through that darkness, he began to understand that who he was could no longer carry him into who he needed to become. That realization broke him open, not to destroy him, but to rebuild him. He no longer fears being alone. He understands now that solitude is sacred. In the quiet, he heard his own voice again, a voice that had been drowned out by the noise of trying to be everything to everyone. Now that voice is clear. It guides him. It grounds him. It reminds him that he is not defined by who left, who betrayed, or who misunderstood him. He is defined by who he chooses to become next. Every setback became a setup. Every disappointment refined his standards. Every lie helped him sharpen his truth. He no longer needs closure from anyone. He gave that to himself. He no longer waits for apologies that may never come. He gave himself the grace to move forward. The man he is becoming does not need to be seen to feel worthy. He does not need to be chosen to know his value. He has chosen himself. He no longer chases love. He attracts alignment. His energy speaks before he does. His presence alone carries weight because it comes from a place of self-respect. He doesn't entertain half efforts or unclear intentions. He has no interest in games, no tolerance for manipulation. His peace is his priority, and anything that threatens it is too expensive. He walks with purpose, not arrogance, not ego, but quiet confidence built through fire. People who once underestimated him now feel the shift. They see the distance. They sense the difference. He is no longer trying to prove himself. He simply moves in a way that proves everything they once missed. The man who was once emotionally available to everyone now guards his heart with wisdom, not out of fear, but out of understanding. He knows now that loyalty is not love without limits. It is love with discernment. He invests in his health, his purpose, his vision. He surrounds himself with people who pour back. He seeks challenge, not comfort. Growth, not stagnation. Truth, not flattery. The next version of him has no room for people who drain, distract, or derail him. He is building something far bigger than anyone knows, and he is doing it quietly, patiently, powerfully. The pain that once made him question everything has now become the foundation he stands on. He has learned that real power doesn't shout. It whispers. It moves differently. It sees everything without reacting to anything. The man he is becoming doesn't lose himself in love, in loyalty, or in loneliness. He remains grounded, intentional, focused. He has nothing to prove because he already knows who he is. And that version of him, the one who rose from the ashes, is no longer fragile. He's forged. Not perfect, but whole. Not loud, but unstoppable.